Hey, very good evening and welcome to the Starr Radio UK. And as we take you through the weekend again, it is the Wednesday edition. I say good evening to each and everyone and all my listeners around the globe. My name is Olami Koiki. Shout out to my producer back in the studio. And as we do it evening, let us start with these powerful one before we go into the program this evening. I say welcome, welcome, and welcome to each and every one of us. Once again, it is a Wednesday edition. It is the week with the Christmas time. I hope everyone is getting ready for the Christmas, as I'm also getting ready for the Christmas. It's getting closer and closer day by day. What gift have you bought for the family? What gift are you? I was told by a family friend of mine that people have been saying, please do not buy me a gift because it is a bit more costly. Wednesday edition, the 20th day of the month of December. It is 2 minutes past, and let's start with these. Let's start with this very beautiful one before we go into the program this evening.
Sunday Adeyemo Igboho orúkọ ńlá tí ń jámọ́ láyà bí ara orúkọ tó ń dẹ́rù gbó lórúkọ gan.
I say good evening and welcome to you. It is the Niger Voices. It is the Starr Radio UK every Wednesday. This is how we take on the program as we drive you home this evening. A lot of things to discuss. Professor Banjakito, you have spoken again to the Yoruba elite. So much conversation on the table. Make sure you get your seat right behind.
Ọ̀wọ́n irin ní má bẹ̀rẹ̀ wọ̀nà ẹ̀dá kan lè ṣì wá lọ́nà mọ́ ẹjẹ́ àtìmọ̀ṣọ́ kan ká lè débi re ẹjẹ́ àjọ gbárùkù ti Sunday Ìgbòho ṣá ọmọ Ìgbòho mọ̀rẹ́ nílùú Alágbàdo Òde ọmọ atapẹ̀tẹ̀ wọnú omi ọmọ gègèlè wodò sànyà ìsànyà òrẹ́ràn bàbá yín láàrin ìdí omi kò sí náà ń kán sí yín lẹ́nu ọmọ òkúta mẹ́ta òkè gbòó ìkan ń ṣe yín ní dábọ̀dàbọ̀ ìkan ní mọ́ rọra ìkan tó kù nígbà tí wọ́n mọ̀ gbòó mọ̀ rẹ́ kí ló dé gbòó mọ̀ rẹ́ sí ọmọ òpópó sanran ìgbàgede gbòó sùn wọn láláìsí bẹ̀rẹ̀ wọn ní kó ní bẹ̀rẹ̀ ó máa kó bẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ ẹ̀sìn òní bímọ méjì ní gbòó mọ̀ rẹ́ bẹ́sìn bá bímọ méjì ní gbòó áfíkọ̀ pọ̀pọ̀ sí amúkan yòókù bọ̀ sànyà àtúmúyà rẹ̀ tí olóró bọ́ àfiṣẹ́rù wálé wàràmùjẹ ọmọ onílé ọ̀la àwọn àjòjì tó ń ṣe ségesège tó láwọn oníbomi kó sí mu wọn láwọn oníbomi sànyàwó ẹsẹ̀ ìgbà tójú kòfìrí ń kọ́ gbogbo wọn náà sáré bomi kó sí mu wọ́n sì bomi sànyàwó ẹsẹ̀ ọmọ abẹ́rẹ́ mẹ́ta òde ayé ọ̀kan ṣẹ́ ọ̀kan tẹ̀ ọ̀kan tó kù ní gbogbo ayé tí ránṣọ kiri gbogbo ọmọ Yorùbá Sunday Igboho onírèlẹ̀ láéláé torí àbá lásán nìkan ń dá òkúta òṣègbè fún wọn o ìmọ̀ràn lásán ni ti balùwẹ̀ kò pọ́sibú kó dòdò láyé ń bí ó kù díẹ̀ kíkọ́ domi láéláé ìtọ́ mi lè domi Sunday Igboho arógun má ti dí tó ń jà fẹ́tọ̀ Yorùbá ní tilé tó kó.
And I say good evening and welcome to the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. Shout out to my producer back in the studio. Good evening to everyone that is joining us from different parts of the globe. My name is Olami Koiki. This evening, there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot happening in Nigeria, and I'll be taking you through all those details tonight as we do every Wednesday. Once again, the insecurity in the country, so many people have become more concerned. And what do we need to do? We need to continue to ask, the current administration of President Bola Tinubu, what he's doing when it comes to the insecurity that is now taking so many lives. There is a lot of discussion tonight. It is all just to ask the question, how prepared are you for the evening? How prepared are you for Christmas? Are you traveling to Nigeria? And if you're going to be traveling to Nigeria, are you concerned? Are you worried about the insecurity? Good evening to you. If you're joining us, share the program, invite your friends. Good evening to you, Mrs. Iyabo Olubumi. Shout out to you, Mrs. Grace Adedeji, Mr. Manuel, Mr. Olawe Mima Adenifuja. Shout out to those of you that are watching, Mr. Lukman, Mrs. Fumilayo Adeshola, Mrs. Olaiwola Dupe Abimbola Aderemi, Mrs. Olu. It seems that I have all my mothers and my auntie that have joined me tonight. I say good evening to those of you that have joined. If is this your first time, what you can do for me is to share the program and invite your friend as well. I'm sure many of you remember these. Many Yorubas are now asking, when do we start the rally? When do we get the engagement? I have a good news for you from Professor Adebanji Akintoye. The Yoruba self-determination struggle. Also, the Biafra government in Examazi, Simon Ekpa, is also telling the Biafra to stay put. Do not travel to Nigeria. Are you going to Nigeria? Mrs. Dorcas Kazim, good evening, morning. Good evening, Mr. John, Mr. Eze. Nnamdi Kanu is still being held by the federal government because they've now decided that Nnamdi Kanu would have to go through the court process as well because of the trial that he was meant to do in 2017. The former president wanted to kill him just like they wanted to kill Oloye Igboho as well. So much is packed in this program tonight. Where do we start from? Let's remind you, when Igboho was traveling from one state to the other, it seems that many politicians were not comfortable with that. And that was one of the reasons that he wanted to be killed. And tonight, let me remind you of this, one of the most popular soundtrack from Ekiti State. Well, the love is too much. The love for Dr. Oloye Igboho is just too much that, many of us continue to pray for him. Mr. Iyola Adedoyin, good evening to you. And shout out to everyone that have joined us so far. Shout out to the presenter, myself. Shout out to all the teams on the Starr Radio UK. And once again, Mr. Timothy, shout out to those of you in the northern part of Nigeria. Shout out to you in the southeast part of Nigeria. How prepared are you for the Christmas? What is your plan? What are you going to be doing? Are you going to be traveling home? If you're in Lagos, are you planning to go to the city, to the state? Like if you're in Lagos, are you going to Ekiti? If you're in Lagos, are you going to Akwa Ibom? Many traffic, so much traffic is also becoming, something that many of us are concerned. Tonight, how safe are we as Christmas is getting closer for many of us that are going to be traveling to Nigeria? And for those of us that are not going to Nigeria, what are your concerns? What should we be telling the president tonight? If you have the opportunity to see President Bola Ahmed Tinubu tonight, what are you going to be telling him? And what is the plan that he has for the security of many Nigerians tonight? My name is Olami Koiki. My job is to tell you what is going on in Nigeria. I'll be telling you all the news headline as well coming out of Nigeria tonight. 9 minutes past, and it seems that so much is at stake, and many are now worried, especially as the food prices continue to grow very, very fast. If you love the kind of outfit that I'm putting on again tonight, what I can tell you is it is not expensive. All just you need to do is end up to Instagram on Omitaf Culture, where you can also let them to show you something like this, Ashwebi, whatever you want, whatever you like it, whether you're in America, you're in Australia, be rest assured that they can get it close to you. And you would also be looking very, very sharp and good like myself, as I always do every Wednesday evening. So Omitaf Culture, is somewhere in Lagos State where they're doing very well. You can also send people if they want to do fashion design training. They have the bespoke tailoring, Ashwebi, custom made Owambe, kiddies wear, fashion training. All these is available on Omitaf Culture. Shout out to the Starr Radio UK group that are also our team in Lagos State, in Ogun State, in Akware, in Ondo State, Ondo, in Ekiti, in Osun. We have a global of different individuals that are also working on behalf of the Starr Radio UK with our sister broadcast, KOIKIMEDIA as well. My name is Olami Koiki, and I welcome those of you that have joined us so far on the TikTok, on the Instagram. Mr. Sulaiman Yusuf, shout out to you. Mr. Abdul Fattah Oladele Zachariah, Mr. Bello Aziz Bolaji, Mr. Gafal Akimbode, Yoruba Movement, good evening to you. Mr. Lekon, all our kings. Wow, it seems that it is a packed night already. I say shout out to my beautiful mom, shout out to my family. The children are already on holiday, And that means that there will be more money to be spent at home, and there will be more noise as well. So in case that you are picking up some noise at the background, just bear with us because we have so much engineer. Once again, shout out to many of you that have joined us tonight. I'm trying to pick where we should start from tonight. Thank you so much to our grandmother, our grandfathers that are joining us almost every day when we go live, especially those of you that we've turned into wherever we are, you just want to know what is going on. I wanted to start with Professor Banji Akintoye's message to the Yorubas, but I thought I would leave that towards the end of the program. Let me first appreciate Iyaewe Aomo, the youth. You know, we talked about kidney last week, and many of us must now start to understand that we got to look after our health. Our health is the priority. If you think that you're not feeling very good, especially because medical, shout out to you, Mr. Michael Coker. Keep the comment coming, and I'll be picking on that as we go into the program. Once again, let me know that we held these awareness last week, and it was a very good one, because what we do not understand is that many of us consume a lot of food, and sometimes those intake has a big impact on our lives. And I've been speaking to Chief Modupe Lawal. You know, we spoke today as well. She'll be joining us in January, because I think that we need to let her come frequently so that we can be able to gauge where we are when it comes to healthcare. Don't look at it as, oh, I'm still young. I'm in my 30. I'm in my 20. I can eat anything I want. Okay, we understand. You can eat anything you want, but remember that especially in Nigeria, especially in African countries, we do not have a good, robust healthcare. And something that we are concerned about is that if you break down in Nigeria today, if you have health crisis, who do you call on to? Shout out to beautiful Auntie Faith David. Shout out to Kentos. Shout out to Mr. Victoria Adeniro. Shout out to those of you that have joined us on the Instagram. Mrs. Felicia Ajagbe, a grandmother, and also many of you. Many of you have been asking, Mr. Koiki, you told us that there's now a transistor radio, even though you have not told us how do we get it. Is it in London? Is it in Canada? Is it in America? Where is this radio? I'll be telling you that. Don't go anywhere yet. Well, you say good afternoon. Well, I'm looking at my time. Well, we probably say good evening. Good evening from London. So I don't know where you are around the world, Mrs. Faith David, but for you to say good afternoon, you are probably in a different planet. And I hope you have not traveled to Nigeria, because I know you love Yoruba land very well. We have the right to self-determination, just like the Scottish are also calling for the same thing. But before we go into all that, let me welcome you. If this is your first time joining me, all you can do for me is just to make sure that you share the message. Share the message. Invite somebody else to come and listen to Naija Voices. Many people said to me, Koiki, you cannot be shouting Yoruba Nation, and you are still one of the people that will be talking about Naija Voices. Let us change that name. And I said, well, Naija Voices was something that we talked about 5 years ago between myself, my producer. We wanted to highlight many problems that the Nigerians are going through. And when we say Nigerians, we literally also remember that we are not just Nigerians, we are indigenous people. That means that we're going to talk about people that are not even Yorubas, people that are Hausas, Fulanis. But one thing is, I think we should stick to that name for now. And then let me remind you that Starr Radio UK is a friend of Yoruba people, is a friend of the Biafra people, the Hausas, and also the 350 different ethnic groups in Nigeria. But one thing is, where I stand as an individual is I want the dissolution of Nigeria. How is that going to happen? What do we do? What do we say? This is where we differ from the current administration, President Bola Tinubu. President Bola Tinubu wants a Nigeria that works for everybody. I don't think so. I don't think Nigeria can be able to work for me and you. And that is the reason why we are all clamoring for Yoruba Nation. So for those of you that wants the Yoruba radio, Mr. Akinlade Moalo say good evening to you. Mrs. Olushola say good evening to you, White Lion. Many people will say, why do you get to call yourself White Lion? Well, somebody gave me that name, and I think it's Baba Rupori. And let me say shout out to all the Yoruba campaigners that are working day and night. Let us start with Nigeria to start with. And I'm going to start on a very sad note. I know you don't want to hear the sad part of Nigeria, but many people say, why is it that only sad bit is what you bring to us? Why not bring the good part? I say, well, we are trying to find the good news in Nigeria, but we are finding it very difficult on a daily basis to give you the good news out of Nigeria, because Nigeria, as some of us have said, is a crime scene. And when something is a crime scene, it is just a crime scene. Let's start from the Juju artist that was kidnapped between Abuja and Kogi State. The Nigerian musician, I'm sure some of you knew that Nigeria is not safe, but we tend to overlook it. We tend to say that nothing is happening, but until something happened, and then all the social media, everybody becomes the news broadcaster. As I was waking up on Monday, this news started filtering out. I thought, well, for me, it is not new, because we have a society that lives in denial. Shout out to all the Biafrans that have joined us so far on the Twitter space. Good evening. This is the Starr Radio UK. Help us to share the program. Remember, you can follow us on the Starr Radio UK, and I'll be saying shout out to many of you as we go into the program. If you can hear me loud and clear, Tinubu only wanted to thief our commonwealth. He didn't even want Nigeria to work. Or more than good evening to you. If you're new on the platform, you want to save money, also, you can listen to us via the MixLR. The difference is you'll be able to hear what I'm saying, but you might not be able to see my beautiful outfit. Triple DRS says, is there any good news in Nigeria? With a question mark. Some might argue that we are portraying Nigeria as bad as if, it is that bad. And I'm trying to say to myself, is Nigeria not a crime scene? A country that even the Amnesty International, before I go into the discussion of the Juju musician that was kidnapped, remember that Amnesty International literally told us that there is human rights abuse by the current administration that is not even 1 year old. President Bola is not even in the office for 1 year, is already also taking the same trail like the former President Muhammadu Buhari. And that is where I get concerned, because we should not be living in denial. We should say the way it is, even though some of you might not feel comfortable with it. And that is why some of us might not want to be in Nigeria, especially if you're a journalist. Because according to Amnesty International, after 6 months in office, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has failed to uphold human rights. That shows that this new administration is almost as bad as the one that left before. And this is where we get concerned. Mr. Olapade Adeni, good evening to you. Also, Mrs. Vic35, shout out to those of you. Let us keep the message going. It is a message of hope. We are already in the festival mood. And I love to be in the festival mood, regardless of whether you are a Christian, you are a Muslim, you are atheist, you are Babalawo, whatever you are. Eshu Day is coming up on the 24th in Nigeria. It's coming up here in Europe. But on the 25th here in London, the whole transportation system is completely wind down. That means that on the 25th, which is a Christmas day, nobody travels on the public transport. It is completely grounded. Ganiolo Yede, shout out to you, Mr. Lasukomi Lawal, Mr. Brown Oldemi Julius. I say good evening to you once again. I say welcome to those of you that have joined us for the first time. Well, if this is your first time of listening to me, you probably have been seeing myself. Shout out to you in Benin Republic. BME Family TV says good evening to you, Mr. Oyetunji. If there's any good, please let me know tonight, because many of us wants to find out if there's ever been a good news. Mr. Benjamin, good evening to those of you that have joined us across the board. Let's start on the first note. 21 minutes past. Once again, thank you so much to many of you that are listening from different parts of the globe. It is on a sad note that we will have to announce that again and again, the insecurity in Nigeria is not going anywhere, even though President Bola Tinubu has been in power for more than 7 months now. My problem to Bola Tinubu, the president, is what is he doing and what is he going to do differently that would allow many of us to return back home without being kidnapped? As I speak to us tonight, another Nigerian from a name called Adeyinka Adeboye is a juju musician that plays very good juju music. His brand is called Omoba the Jumbo Beat. He was traveling back from Kogi State to Abuja after playing whether a wedding concert, I'm not too sure. But from the polls that came out of Nigeria between Sunday night and the Monday morning indicated that he was kidnapped. Shout out to Elijah White. Shout out to Elijah Adeyeye. We are looking forward to your birthday party, and be rest assured that we are saying happy birthday in advance. If you're celebrating your birthday in the month of December, I say happy birthday to you as well. On a serious note, are you concerned as a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Are you worried that many times that we talk about the insecurity of the country, many of you say maybe we are overdriving it, as today the Biafra government in exile is now telling the Biafrans to stay put. Do not travel to Nigeria. It is not safe. Well, if you disagree with the Biafrans, what about the FCDO? What do I mean by the FCDO? I'm talking about the Foreign and the Commonwealth Development Office here in UK that is now advising anyone that is traveling from United Kingdom that you would also lose your insurance if you travel to certain states, that your insurance could be invalidated. I want you to listen to this program. It's very, very important that you tell somebody. I am not saying that you shouldn't go to Nigeria, but my question is, be security conscious. Let's go back again to what happened between Sunday or Saturday stroke Sunday. This is a juju musician. He must have been plying that road without thinking that there might be a risk. But as I speak to you tonight, both Mr. Adeyinka Adeboye and another 13 members of his crew have now been kidnapped in Nigeria. And as I speak to us tonight, nobody has made any effort that I'm aware of, because if we are aware of that, we will talk about it. The question is, where is the president? Why is the president not speaking out when Nigerians are kidnapped? Who are these kidnappers? According to the Minister of Mineral Resources, Dele Alake, said, and I quote, the influential people, the billionaires, the millionaires, the woo-to-woo are the people behind the kidnapping and the terrorism. I did not say so. This is what Dele Alake said to me some few weeks ago, which I say it is something that we have been talking about even before Dele Alake told us the same thing. According to Dele Alake, Nigerians, powerful Nigerians, are literally behind the illegal mining. They are also funding how this juju artist was kidnapped and many of his own band members. Dele Alake said, and I quote, according to some of the dailies on the 12th of December this year, powerful Nigerians are behind illegal mining, insecurity, Alake alleged. Who is Dele Alake? He was one time a commissioner for information during the tenure of Bola Tinubu as the Lagos State governor. But presently, right now, he is in charge of the Minister of Solid Mineral. Dele Alake has blamed the unnamed powerful. I'm not too sure why he doesn't want to give us names, because by having those names, we can say to the international community, it is time that this individual must either be arrested or something needs to be done. Because what would eventually happen is there will be more kidnapping, there will be more terrorism, and these are being funded. Remember that Dr. Malafi Obadia told us the same thing before he was killed. Dele Alake refused to give us names, but he went further to say that not just illegal mining activities. We are talking about, the Zamfara gold. We are talking about the Osun gold. We are talking about so many gold that are being missing out of Nigeria. But do you know that we are not just talking about gold? We are talking about many, many mineral resources that Nigerians should be the ones benefiting it. But tonight, many are not benefiting it. Alhaji Maja Kodumi, good evening to you. Mr. Ezekiel Oyetundi, Mr. Modawa Jelili, shout out to those of you at Max Media. Mr. Dewale, I say, no going back. Yoruba Nation is the only way forward. Maybe you want to stick back so that I'll be telling you what the message from Professor Adebanji Akintoye. I say, shout out to you. Mr. Toby Iwalo, he say, good news in Nigeria. You they whine me. Even Davido says that everything is fake in Nigeria. I'm sure you know what I mean by that. Because in Abia, some few days ago, I saw where the NAFDAC literally busted where they were making wine. Be careful, many of you that are traveling home. If you know how to drink, you might be drinking adulterated or fake wine, even up to NSC. Because I know Nigerians love to have a good time. I know we love good time, but we have to be very, very careful. Alhaji Rashid say Yoruba Nation is definitely not going back. If you want to know about the Yoruba Nation transistor radio, where you can buy it, is it in America? Is it in Nigeria? Is it in Canada or UK? I can tell you that the transistor radio is presently in Nigeria. But the question is, how do we say to Nigerians that Nigeria is no longer the kind of Nigeria that we used to know about 40 years ago because of the insecurity? We are not talking about the insecurity alone now. We are also concerned about the inflation. I know that inflation in UK is also going down a little bit, but do you know that in the last 20 years, the inflation in Nigeria is going very high? Mr. Olafin Sheyi Olawale say, good evening to you. I say, shout out to you as well. Just Reason, good evening, my brother. Olakunle say, almost every drinks in Nigeria is fake. Even the close-up toothpaste now, we are now calling it fake. My question is, I'm sure many of you remember, that powerful NAFDAC chairman or NAFDAC DG. I'm sure I want to remember her name. Please remind me her name. She died eventually trying to protect Nigerians. If you can remember the name, please put it on the comment section and I'll pick that up. Let me stick first to the story that came out of Nigeria over the weekend. A Nigerian juju musician known as Omoba Dijombo Beat and his crew members were kidnapped while returning from an event on Sunday. Kidnapping has become a big business in Nigeria. Yes, thank you so much, Dora Akunyili. Is it Akunyili or Akunyili? I think that pronunciation is wrong. Is it Dora Akunyili? Yes, Dora. Mrs. Dora, may her soul continue to rest in peace. She was killed by powerful Nigerians that wanted to produce fake drugs, fake wine, fake beer, fake toothpaste. Even Nigeria itself is fake, because we can now confirm that the foundation of Nigeria is fake and the 1914 amalgamation must now be de-amalgamated. We're going to come back to that later on tonight. These individuals have performed a live show in Abuja during the weekend. According to Boye Bears, the kidnappers are now demanding, Professor Dora Akunyili, thank you so much, all the way in Germany, Mr. Kolawole, our father. Prince Alex, if I haven't mentioned your name, thank you so much. I will do along the program. Innovate, thank you so much. Again, if you're watching us for the very, 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 very first time, this is the platform called
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
Starr Radio UK.
It is called.
This is Starr Radio UK.
Every Wednesday, this is how we roll it out from here.
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7. Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
Shout out to every one of you that have joined me tonight. It's a very packed program, and I want to keep moving very, very swiftly because there's a lot of things to touch on. I wanted to remind us that nobody prays to be kidnapped. But what is the role of these security staff, the security that we have in Nigeria, from the Navy to the Army to whoever they are? What is the role? I'm sure many of you remember that we talked about Professor Moyo, a professor that traveled to Nigeria. He was almost killed until the Igbo in Festac saved his life. Even though many times we do not love each other, but when it comes to sometimes saving each other, people leave that section of whether you be Yoruba man or Hausa man. Professor Moyo Okediji spoke out, and I'm sure some of us I've read through the details of how he returned to Nigeria. I am not saying that if you're not going to be traveling or you're traveling, the question is, should we be traveling with heavy cash in this day and age of Nigeria? Thank you so much, Mr. Yodeji. Says the late NAFDAC boss, Dora Akunyili. She was killed, just like Malafia was killed. We could have lost a very prominent Yoruba man, a very prominent man that lives all his life in America, but decided to take a trip to Nigeria. That trip almost cost his life. I'm talking about Professor Moyo. Professor Moyo has been in America for some years now, but for whatever reason, he wanted to go back home to Ile-Ife. He traveled to Ghana, decided to book a vehicle that would take him all the way from Ghana through to Togo, Benin Republic. But as usual, when you get to that border from going into Nigeria, is a different ball game. Professor Moyo Okediji survived today. I'm sure we pray that those that kidnap, these are our friends, our brothers, our fathers, Adeyinka Adeboye, the Nigerian musician known as Juju artist, with his 13-member band, will also be free. But they are asking 10 million naira each. Mr. Aminu Tajuddin, shout out to you, Mr. Kola De Chesson, Mrs. Adebimpe Atanda, and many of you that have joined us. Keep the comment coming, and I'll be picking on that along the line. This again is still the finest African and Caribbean radio station, and every Wednesday, this is what we do.
Starr Radio UK. This is Starr Radio UK. This is Starr Radio UK.
What do we say about Professor Moyo Okediji? Professor Moyo Okediji said, and I quote, that he traveled into the country via Ghana, decided to enter Nigeria by road. Would you, as Nigerians, travel by road if you're coming from America, from Canada, from Japan, from Turkey, from Cyprus? African Parrot, shout out to you, and extend my greeting to the beautiful 2 children and your wife as well. Once again, my name is Olami Koiki. Many of you say that we should stop demarketing Nigeria. I said there's nothing called Nigeria. It is as fake as the way Lugard created it in 1914 on behalf of the British Empire. I came in through Ghana. I decided to enter Nigeria by road. That is not me. That is Professor Moyo speaking right now. I could see the lagoon, the landscape. I was riding in a beautiful Jeep that I hired to drive me down. Everything went well. I mean, you wonder why everything went well from Ghana to Togo, Benin Republic, until he stepped into this, what I call the zoo. Because if Nigeria is not a zoo, all you need to do is, I cannot show you that video. Go and see how a military officer with some men in the northern part are killing elephants. And I'm wondering, is Nigeria not a zoo? A contraction that needs to be discussed on the round table before things goes the other way around. While we are protecting lives of people, those in the north are not just protecting the life, they are also killing elephants. I'm not joking. Go on the social media, you will find the video. And the man says that this is not the first one. They've killed many like that. The question is, why are they killing this elephant? Shout out to you all the way in Germany. And once again, good evening to many of you that are listening to me tonight. My name is Olami Koiki, and this is the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. And if this is going to be your first time joining me, I would like to say to you like this.
Welcome.
That is to say, welcome to the program. Every Wednesday, I've been doing this for the last 6 years. I remember we had Showore in the studio, Feladuro Toye. We had some couple of artists. We have even a king, from Yoruba land that visited us as at the time when we've done so much different interviews with different people. But right now, we are discussing Nigeria again. Professor Moyo says, and I quote, everything went well in Ghana, Togo, Benin Republic until I stepped into Nigeria. Why is it that it is always Nigeria that gives itself the marketing? It is not me that is the marketing Nigeria. You got to speak to the police officer that continue to extort many of you. You got to talk to those that are in charge and refuse to accept that we cannot continue to have it like this. I'm sure many of you remember EndSARS. What was the end of EndSARS? it was again the killing of innocent Nigerians. Till today, many Nigerians are still being killed by the security, and this is where President Bola Tinubu seems to be losing the plot. By now, President Bola Tinubu should have fired every immigration officer, police, custom that were on duty on the 12th day of the month of December, which is just less than 8 days ago. But if Bola Tinubu, the president, cannot even tell one of the officers that bombed the innocent Nigerians in Kaduna to resign, the question is, do you think that the Amnesty International were wrong to say that after 6 months in office, Bola Tinubu, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, failed to uphold human rights? Nigerian President Bola Tinubu administration, according to Amnesty International, said, and I quote, has failed to ensure respect for human rights. The right of Professor Moyo Okediji was abused by the immigration officer as a Nigerian traveling back to his fatherland, even though we've told many of you that there's nothing called Nigeria. It is just one business center that was set up by the British Empire in 1914 to favor the colonialism as at the time. Some of you say we have been given independence. I say, well, what have you achieved in the last 63 years, if not failure upon failure upon failure? And today, many of you refuse to accept that Nigeria is as dead, and it is going to affect every single one of us. Whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Muslim, whether you are a traditionalist, at some point in your life, you will not have access things of life, and this is the reason why some of us are concerned that even the current president has literally started to respect the human right and the rule of law. Many of you would never have access to good law in Nigeria because we are asking for the justice for Mohbad. But the question is the powerful individuals, and shout out to those that are campaigning for the justice for Mohbad. And even though we might not talk about it as much as we do, but we want justice for Mohbad, just as I want justice for so many of you, including Anyanwola Bamishe, that was killed in Lagos State public transport. There's no justice for Anyanwola Bamishe. So when some of you say that we should not demarket Nigeria, even Nigeria itself continues to demarket itself. Shout out to many of you. And this is the difference between living in Europe, where we have a civilized society where things are not working, but at least it works to some extent, even though some of us are foreigners that have lived in this country for the last 2 decades. If I'm returning back to UK after a trip, I am always welcome back home, because this is still at home for me. TJ Baba, shout out to you, and thank you so much to many of you that are joining us tonight. Tonight is very, very emotional. Tonight is also very powerful. Tonight is about delivering the message of hope. It is not going to happen in your church. It is not going to happen in your mosque. It is going to happen when everyone is start to ask questions about why we are living as slaves in our country called Nigeria. That is if you ever have a country in the first place. Many of you tonight are expecting your pastor, your imam, your elite, your academic, your technical elite. And this is where Babakitoye says that our Yoruba elite are not speaking out, and it's becoming a danger for many of us in the Yoruba struggle. And as I continue to say all the time, may Nigeria not happen to you. Nigeria literally happened to Professor Moyo Okediji. He was lucky not to have been killed. Even when he had to get to Festa, he was saved by the Igbos, or those that prefer to know themselves as Biafrans. Once again, my job is to remind you that we are all in this together, whether you disagree with me or not, whether I agree with you or not. Nigeria is a fake country, and this is coming from Mr. Adewale Saheed. Shout out to Mr. Saliu Babatunde. Wherever you're listening to me from, we are not here to say to you that you should agree with the right to self-determination, but why would President Bola Tinubu not uphold the human right and the rule of law after 6 months in office? Amnesty International said, and I quote, it launched human rights agenda for the government following a period in which Tinubu unveiled new government policy that did not address the rampant human rights violation across the country. Many of these are not even coming up to you. I saw a video where people are in the traffic, and it's because military refused to allow the road to drive through. My question is, Professor Moyo Okedeji, you are a very lucky man to be alive. And I'm sure you'll be thanking the God, Yoruba land, or whatever you believe in. He says, and I quote, when he stepped into Nigeria, Nadia trouble started. The first immigration checkpoint that we encountered was at Seme border on Nigerian side. One of the immigration officers took a look at me, and they've done that so many times to many of you. They will look at you down, and sometimes you'll be asking, what is the role of you as an immigration officer? Each time I return back to UK after a long travel, I am literally welcomed by the border officer that says, Mr. Koiki, welcome back home. How come that is not happening, not just at the border? Many of you will be traveling to Nigeria. At the airport, they become the animals, the animalistic individual that doesn't want us to come back home. That is why many of us refuse to come back home, because when you come back home, you are likely to be in danger. One of the immigration officers took a look at me and said, calm down, Oga, calm down. Who be you? Calm down. I'm sure you know what that means. Well, as an immigration officer, he will respect. To cut the long story short, they literally robbed him of $500. If you calculate $500, remember that the military, according to the news coming out this morning, as I was reporting to Mr. Archie, says, and I quote, the soldiers are earning less than 50,000 naira monthly. This is not me saying that. This is the defense chief saying that to many of us, that the military, or the soldiers, as we love to call them, the Nigerian soldiers, are paid 50,000 naira monthly. So if somebody have stolen $500 from an American returnee or a Nigerian returnee, because he has an American passport, but he still have his Nigerian passport, that shows that that is a good amount of money stolen from this individual that could live for these criminals. And I'm not surprised, because many people refuse to speak out. Mrs. Sarah Oyelowo, good evening to you. Oseni Nuruddin. My name is Olami Koiki, and this is how we roll it every Wednesday on the finest network, coming up to 15 minutes to 7 p.m. You are literally 1 hour ahead of us. I am still talking about the Professor Moyo Okediji that survived Nigeria. Are you going to survive it? Remember, Mr. Gbenga Olabi did not survive it, and the PhD holder, Abolore, did not survive it as well.
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7. Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
Well, every 24/7 we broadcast from you every Wednesday. Now, let's go back again to Professor Moyo. Mr. Femi Adebisi, good evening to you, and thank you so much to many of you that have joined us on all the platforms, and I appreciate each and every one of you, including my beautiful mother, my wives, my children, and I love you all as we are preparing for the Christmas in less than 5 days. Professor Moyo was lucky not to have been killed. He said it himself. Let's go further. There were many of them. Sometimes they look very rough. Sometimes they look like animals that wants to chop you, that wants to get you out, because they can feel that you are not one of them. Especially, they will even know that you are not living in Nigeria, because the way you speak to them, they can automatically tell that you are a stranger. To them, you are a stranger. To you, you are a citizen. One of our mother, Mrs. Oluremi Kilanko Ogabi, said, it is a big shame on the part of the bad immigration officer on our borders. My question is, would you be traveling with large amount of money as you go back to Nigeria for the Christmas? If you're traveling with large amount of money, I don't know what you would do, but all I can say is take very good care of yourselves. There's so many ways you can keep your money in America, abroad, and get that money to you. I'm sure you all know that there's different application that you can send the money to your Nigerian bank account. And if you don't have a Nigerian bank account, all you need to do is go back home, open the bank account, and then you can get your money out. But if you want to go out to Nigeria with large amount of money, which is something that you have to declare, depending on if you're taking about almost $10,000 more, you would have to declare that at the immigration. If otherwise, you might be counted into money laundering. So you got to be very, very careful, especially in the new era that we are living today. Mr. Johnson just recently says, this same Professor Moyo could have started saying, we are all scaremongers if his journey had gone smoothly. I've been a lie. He could have said the same thing. I don't know. As you're joining us tonight, have you shared the broadcast? Are you with us on the Starr Radio UK? Good evening to all our listeners on the Twitter space, Mr. Solomon, Mr. Agbaje, and Mr. Mimiri. I hope I didn't massacre the name. I am Ola Yomi Koiki, one of the major campaigner for the Yoruba nation, and I say to you, I am the last man standing. Let's go further. One of the immigration officers, like I said, come down, Oga, who be you? There were many of them. They invited him. They invited me, more like drag me to their share. I mean, not just invite, they literally dragged him because they realized that this one, we could chop money from him. And they actually did. They stole $500 from him, plus another $40. He thought he was giving them $40, but in the long run, they've actually stolen $500. That means he must have been traveling with probably give and take about close to $4,000, because it was a huge amount of money, according to Professor Moyo, that was stolen. Prince Chibuzo, John, Paul, good evening to you, Mr. Taiwo Jimo, and Mr. Adegoke Mufu. Good evening to you, Mr. Smith Taiwo. Once again, if you're new to the platform, Allow Baba say they have helped the politician to pass the fake news around. Allow Baba say all media houses in Nigeria are brown envelope media. None of them are able to speak out. Probably maybe Rufai from Arise Television, and probably one or two of them as well. Ogumala say, I am loud and clear, and I love that when I'm loud and clear, because Itagara will always say to me, Mr. Koiki, I'm going to be by sometime the audio goes down and it goes up, and I'm sure Mr. Archie, my producer, Mr. Frank David, and the technical team are working around the clock to make sure that we do not have hiccup, especially when we're speaking to you on a Wednesday evening. If you're new to the platform, share the program, because I always hear that also on a church program. Share the link. So you should also be sharing this link. You might save your life tonight. If you're going home, please take all precaution. I want to move swiftly away from this, but I want us to remind ourselves that 14 Nigerians tonight are still being held by the criminal called Boko Haram and ISIS. Aluka Baba, all the way in Lagos State, in Agege. I say shout out to you in Agege, Banki Akim Agege, and help me say shout out to OBJ. I'm not talking about the former president OBJ. I'm talking about one of the Yoruba campaigner that stood for the Yoruba nation. He was almost killed during this program called the Campaign for Yoruba Nation. His leg was shot by the Nigerian police. Till date, OBJ, I'm not talking about former President Obasanjo, I'm talking about another nickname to one of our friend and a brother. His leg is still have this bad injury. We've tried all our best, but again, as we can tell you, his leg has badly been affected in the course of this movement. Many people have suffered so much, but we will not give up, and we will continue our quest for the Yoruba nation struggle. Then, according to him, they said I had to settle them. Okay, first of all, they said I want to take it. They took my hand luggage with all the money that I brought from the United States of America. Please, if you're traveling home, be very, very careful. Mrs. Kubi, thank you so much. Mr. Tolani, Mrs. Tolani Alade, Timothy Towodariko, all the names I've mentioned so far, I'm calling those names with optimus or respect. Thank you so much. Keep the comment coming. If you like the kind of outfit that I'm putting on, why not check Omitaf Culture, or you can reach out to them on this number. Why not take the number down? It's very, very important. You can have the best outfit before Christmas and the New Year, especially if you're going to be going to the crossover service. You want to look very good. Get in touch with Omitaf Culture, or you visit them on their Instagram page and see as many different things that they've done in the past. 081-385-28588. If you're outside Nigeria, you want to WhatsApp them, +234-813-852-8588. I will call it the way Nigerians normally call their numbers, 23 48, 13, 85, 28, 58, and another 8. I hope I got it right that way. Or should we say 08, 13, 85, 28, 588. Whichever one you take, you can get in touch with them. They also have a bespoke tailoring, Ashwebi, custom made, Owambe. And in the last 6 years, they've been doing this by making sure that every Wednesday on the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London, this is how we look very good.
At work,
At home,
on your smartphone.
in your car,
At work,
at home,
on your smartphone.
in your car,
At work,
at home.
on your smartphone.
And this is again
Starr Radio UK. This is Starr Radio UK.
I'll be telling you everything you need to know with the Biafra government in exile. Is very, very important. Again, there's a message by the Biafra government in exile, Simon Ekpa, also saying the same thing to all the Biafran. Stay put. Don't travel to the Islamic State. You are likely to be kidnapped and you are likely to be killed. And it is not a joke. Many people have died because some of you are being monitored. So if you're going home, especially if you have been on the social media lately in the last 1 year or more, when you go home, go very quiet. You're likely to be drinking NSC that is fake. I saw that in Abia State. So if you're in the Southeast region, you're likely to be consuming a fake drink. You might travel with your own drink. You can buy them as much as you have from the custom duty, depending on where you're going to be flying from. Also, if you're flying into Air France on that area, if you don't hold British passport, American passport, you're holding just an ordinary indefinite stay, I beg you to check with your airline. You will definitely not to travel through that end because you need a Shanghai visa. If you're traveling direct from whichever, again, it's going to cost a lot of money because we know that airlines are taking so much out of us, even though traveling to America is very cheap. Traveling to Australia is very cheap. I'm not too sure why a 6-hour journey has become like something else. The military are crying out. They are asking who is supporting, who is sponsoring Simon Ekpa and the Biafra. The question is it not best for us to sit down together and talk about the united Nigeria, whether we are still united or not? According to the kidnappers, according to him, kidnappers are looking for returnees to kidnap in exchange for ransom in Nigeria. This is Simon Ekpa, the PM Biafra government in exile, that also had a press briefing with the Ambazonia yesterday. He added that those abroad should send their families money this festival period instead of returning to the southeastern part of Nigeria. Those telling you to come back for Christmas are kidnappers. They are out of cash and their only hope is to kidnap you for ransom during the Christmas. You must take every precaution as you're traveling this period. These are just advice. Same advice from the FCDO, same advice from the Starr Radio UK. The children are currently on holiday. That means the airport will be very, very, very busy. I'm asking again, did Professor Moyo did the right thing by traveling with large amount of money or traveling with an expired Nigerian passport? Or is it just that the immigration officer and the military personnel that were attached to the semi border are as criminals as those that killed the innocent Nigerians during the NSAS? What is your take on that, Mrs. Shadi Salami Adenekon? Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Rewali Shaibu Eleja, thank you so much. And many of you that are watching us in Lagos Island, in Abuja, many DSS are watching me every day. Sultan of Sokoto is watching me. All the kings are watching us because they know that this is the only truth platform that speaks the truth to the power, and it's called
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
Radio UK.
They know that on the Starr Radio UK network, we say the way it is. They asked for my Nigerian passport. I told them it had expired. Not me, Professor Moyo Okediji, that I was in Nigeria to renew it. They said it was an offense for me to enter the country with an expired passport. I apologized, but they wanted none of that. They said I had to settle them. They had my wallet containing the money I had brought to spend in Nigeria. That's where their eyes is, the money. The moment the security officers see money and they're earning 50,000 naira every month, what do you think is going to happen? You become a trap or a species for them. They said that I have to settle them. How can you come to Nigeria with an expired passport even though you were traveling with an American passport? We take none of that. They had my wallet that I had a $1 note, but in another bag in his hand luggage, Professor Moyo had stack amount of money. I'm not too sure the total amount because he didn't disclose. I guess he was traveling with nothing less than $5,000. If they were able to steal $500 out of that, he must have been traveling back home with about $5,000, but I don't have evidence to that. But the two $20 notes that they saw, he decided to give it to them just to get himself out of that situation room. I have had stories of visitors to the country ending up dead. So that means Professor Moyo is aware, just like many of you are aware today, and sometimes you just overlook it and say, you are just overdriving the matter. Well, until it happened to you, I will be here to talk about you, just as we are talking about the innocent musician that just went to play music. On his way back, he has now been kidnapped, 14 of them, and they're asking or demanding for 10 million naira each. He's not the only one. Those that were kidnapped on their way to Sokoto from Akwa Ibom, the NYSC. I'm not sure why we are taking the risk of sending innocent Nigerians to different parts of Nigeria, knowing that the risk is just too high. But the NYSC director traveled with military and security personnel as we are about to move away from this part of the insecurity. My job is to just you. I love every single one of our listeners. It is a Christmas, but the last thing we want to hear is that Nigeria has happened to you. Take it or leave it. Nigeria is not safe. Take it or leave it. Nigeria, as we speak tonight, is going through a turmoil. People are looking up to some of us outside the country. They monitor your social media handle, and when you go back home, you could be a trap for them. And if you don't agree with me on that, maybe I should give you the latest update. Again, Biafra government have issued travel advice to Igbos in diaspora ahead of the Christmas. This is coming from Simon Ekpa, the government in exile of the Biafra. Not just that. Do you know that Nigeria still remains number 2 when it comes to second ranking in Africa for organized crime according to the Index 2023? I'll repeat that again.